Business owners navigating the most regulated and rapidly evolving industry in the country, and MCSD alumni who have taken their education directly into clinical and community service. Together, they represent a first-person, on-the-ground view of where we are, what still needs to change when it comes to veterans' access to cannabis and plant-based medicine. It's going to be a very dynamic conversation, that I can promise. So, to begin my panelists' bios, we are going to begin with the film's producer, Air Force veteran, filmmaker, advocate, and suicide survivor, Steve Elmore, who spent 20 years in the military. Steve spent 20 years in the military before turning his camera on the veteran mental health crisis. In 2017, a self-described skeptic, he began documenting veterans trading pharmaceuticals for cannabis and self-funded Unprescribed, a multi-award-winning documentary now free on Amazon Prime for those who may want to view it again when they get home or tell others about it. He went on to found the Unprescribed nonprofit dedicated to reducing veteran suicide through advocacy and media. Thank you, Steve. Then we have Rick Glass. Everybody welcome Rick. Rick is a Marine veteran and founder of Canna Cares, the only cannabis education nonprofit in Carroll County, Maryland. After years of struggling with alcohol and prescription medication addiction, cannabis changed his life. Just 3 days ago, on 4/20, he celebrated 9 years alcohol and 8 years off prescription medication. He has become a leading Maryland voice for cannabis stigma reduction and for ensuring that the community reinvestment and repair fund dollars are directed toward education and non-enforcement. Thank you for joining us, Rick. Up next, we have Renee Reisinger, who is the infamous, the formidable Renee Reisinger, is a dual board certified nurse practitioner with over 4 decades of healthcare experience. She is a board member for Veterans Initiative 22. She is also a graduate of the MCSD program as well. Since 2017, she has certified more than 4,900 patients for medical cannabis use. That deserves many applause. A UMD alum, she brings clinical rigor to her advocacy work with VI22, the Connor Sheffield Foundation, and Americans for Safe Access, normalizing cannabis medicine at one patient and one provider conversation at a time. Next, we have Sean Williams. Welcome, Sean. So Sean is an Air Force veteran and founder of Burner's Block, a Maryland organization turning cannabis culture into direct community action through book drives, homeless outreach, and reentry support. Sean also earned an MS from the MCST program in 2021, which he credits for opening doors to policymakers in 2023. My bad. Which he credits for opening doors to policymakers and elevating Burner Block's reach. His work centers on equity, ensuring the communities most harmed by the war on drugs have a real seat at the cannabis table. Well, up next, up next we have Brandon Wyatt, Esquire. So Brandon is the owner of Black Market, principal at Wyatt Legal and Consulting, and co-founder of the MAS Alliance LLC. He is a decorated Army combat veteran and Maryland attorney whose work sits at the intersection of cannabis law, policy, and access. He advises cannabis businesses on compliance and licensing around the Mid-Atlantic and has served in boards and roles with Minority Cannabis Business Association, Patients Out of Time, and Weed for Warriors Project. He brings to this panel the lens of someone who has lived every tension in this film, veteran, lawyer, and operator, building the infrastructure that patients deserve. So my intro, which I've already said, that I'm Maribel Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Veterans Initiative 22. I am an Army combat veteran. I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So again, I want to thank you all for being here today. And I truly, again, want to thank Steve for all that you've done to put this film together. I'm going to begin with you, Steve, of course I should. And I would like to hear a little bit more about the origin story of Unprescribed. But more importantly, Unprescribed came out 5 years ago. Today we've seen major changes, which is we're going to talk about later on the channel. But I wanted to know what are you seeing today that still needs to change? What are you seeing that still remains? Just give us some more background and future.
Thank you. I think that's a great opening. And then following me, I want to hear from everybody any questions that you have, and if you have them up front right now. If not, while we're all speaking, please raise your hand and let us know if you have related stories or questions for any of us, okay? Also, this is an intimate setting. Can you guys come a little closer? Come down to the first 5 rows. Also, when when you guys have questions, those coffin-shaped things on your desk are microphones. Don't be afraid to touch them and ask your questions.
They do look like coffins.
They do. So full disclosure, while I'm an advocate for veterans and really pushy on lawmakers and our government, I'm also a federal employee as well. I'm also a lifetime recruiter. I did 12 years in recruiting service, putting young men and women in boots. I signed up to go to combat, and I never went. And so I have something like survivor's remorse, and that's part of what drives me. And I get goosebumps talking about it while y'all getting the closest. So thank you for doing that for me. It helps my vision and helps me connect with you guys as well. And that's part of what started, if you really want to go back to that. I work for the National Cemetery Administration. I'm not supposed to use that in conjunction with this, but I do want to relate that to my life as a veteran and starting from cradle to grave. There's lots of benefits, GI Bill, medical, and everything like that. And there's one more that we don't tell our military folks because it's something they don't think about. But the last benefit that I want every sort of person who served after they've used their GI Bill and housing, I want to prevent them from using the last benefit they earned, and that's their burial benefits. So that's my mission. That's why I connect to that. So I'm advocating for veterans' lives all the way up until the day they're not here. So it's very personal. And so with that, I retired in 2012, and I worked 20 years just to get some basic benefits for my time and my struggles, and I earned them, and our government wanted to take them away from us. They were talking about, saving the budget by cutting benefits. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, like they wanted to cut our commissaries, all kinds of things. And so I started to produce my own documentary because I've just always been a guy behind the camera. And so I started a film called Allegiance to the Same, because that's the oath that we all take, and so do they. Fast forward, that never took off thanks to the VSOs, MSOs that are out there who stood up for us, veterans themselves, and saved our benefits. But I had some trailers already made and some veterans who were working on a grow trying to establish a marijuana grow in a very conservative Midwest back in 2017. Reached out to me about documenting that, and so I had to really engage with them, and I just basically raised the bullshit flag. What do you mean you're going to use cannabis for medicine? Didn't you know this is a career killer? We just spent 20 years not using it, and I had used it before I joined the military. I enjoyed it more than drinking, and so I said, sure, I'm definitely on board because I want to learn more. It didn't pan out. They didn't have the budget, but I was hooked, and I wanted to know more. And so making this film was my journey into cannabis. I was working for Canada at the time, so it's amazing that and I worked with public affairs, and it was amazing that I was able to talk to the people who engage with filmmakers. You know, when you see battleships on TV and movies, I worked in that office next door, so it was great to be able to make sure I covered my ass talking about an illegal substance in the federal government I wasn't using at the time, but now I am, and I've learned from my own work, and so I hope that this advocacy carries forward with all of you, and you can do the same. Thank you.
So one thing each of us have in common, where our missions for each of whether our business or organization intersects, is through veteran suicide prevention. So I want to start with this data. The VA's 2025 National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report that was released in February of 2026 shows 6,398 veteran suicides in 2023, averaging 17.5 per day. We are not seeing a meaningful reduction in veteran suicide. 61% of veterans who died by suicide in 2023 had not received VA health care in the prior year. The most frequently identified risk was pain, and since 2001, we have lost more than 120,000 veterans to suicide, more than all U.S. combat deaths in every war since Vietnam combined. So this question is for each of the panelists. From your perspective, whether clinical, advocacy, entrepreneurial, or lived experience, what do you believe is the single greatest driver of veteran suicide that isn't getting enough attention?
So, I think it's really the loss of identity after service. When you have on that uniform, you kind of know who you are. And that doesn't come easily when you come in civilian work. At least I'm just speaking from my experience. I don't know, so my co-servicemen and servicewomen can relate. But I believe a lot of veterans are lost once that uniform comes off, and they feel like they need to have it all figured out. As by that, I mean including PTSD. They feel like they need to have it all figured out, and I feel like that loss of identity is one of the biggest issues. We don't really have any type of, not that I know of, programs that really touch on that, like, if that makes sense.
I was going to say pride. I know veterans have a lot of pride that's instilled in them, which I think is a very good thing, especially when in the military. But unfortunately, when they get out, they kind of hold on to a lot of that pride, and it's the inability to ask for help. I know a lot of veterans struggle with that. As a recovering alcoholic, I wanted to bring up an interesting point because I love the amount of respect that the veterans get in our community, but something that I've seen that is very concerning to me. If I'm at my local bar and I'm drinking 10 shots of Fireball and I have somebody come up to me and say, "Rick, why did you just drink your 10th shot of Fireball?" And my response is, "Well, it's the anniversary date of one of my friends dying in Iraq." Not only will they condone the behavior, they might even buy you that 11th shot. And I think we need to be put in a position, which is something that I've done, is while veterans have been through a lot, veterans also need to be challenged as well. Because what I needed to hear in that moment is, how are you honoring your friend by taking 11 shots of Fireball on a Wednesday night? So ultimately, I do think it's pride. I think we hold on to a lot of tough guy bravado, and I think that can really hurt us. And I think we really need to understand that there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help. We just have to ask for it.
So I think as a healthcare provider, we do our patients a big disservice when we don't listen to them. One of the ethics that we need to abide by is autonomy, and part of that is shared decision making. So I really have to question healthcare providers that don't educate themselves on the treatment modalities such as yesterday I was leaving the health department. I had been working with somebody that I was precepting, and she said I need your credentials. And I also threw in there University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, Medical Cannabis, Masters in Science. And she works in hospice, and I said, you do talk to your patients about cannabis, don't you? Oh no, it's federally illegal. And I said, are you going to put down University of Maryland School of Pharmacy? And she said no. So, this morning when I heard we went to Schedule 3, I thought everybody needs to rethink about learning and talking about cannabis as medicine. And with our veterans, when we think about trauma-informed care, that fight or flight, freeze and fawn, we need to start addressing this. And then, like you said, connectedness. One of the things I think that we really need to discuss with our veterans, like lifestyle medicine, a healthy diet, exercise, avoidance of harmful substances. So many people, it's like the norm to medicate with alcohol, but it's so dangerous. And then the thing that I didn't really think about until I had listened to this webinar was connectedness, and the connectedness that we see in the veteran community. And I know my husband really struggled with that during COVID when he was home by himself, and I was the main person he saw every day. I felt bad for him. But it's great for him to come out and get into a group, with other veterans. I think that's so important.
So, Renee, it's actually going to go back to you. So, Renee, you're in clinical practice. Are there specific evidence-based frameworks from MCST, from the program here, that you apply when a patient comes to you seeking cannabis-based care, especially a veteran?
Yes. So, like any treatment modality, cannabis is medicine. We have an endocannabinoid deficit, and we all are in a deficit because of our diet, exercise, and stress that we live in. So everybody needs to get educated about the endocannabinoid system and how to tune it up. And then like any other treatment modality, with the patient, you go through risk versus benefit. And cannabis is just one tool in the clinician toolbox among others. But you want to present cannabis use, risk, side effect, benefit. It's a high benefit, it's low risk. It's some risk, it's not no risk. For instance, years ago I had a patient with Parkinson's disease that I was certifying for cannabis, and I warned him ad nauseum about smoking and tremors and dropping it and starting a fire. There's other risks. The high THC content that we see in the dispensaries really concerns me. And then, I love to follow Dr. Dustin Salas, start low and go slow. And I think with medical users, what we're looking for is that lowest dose of THC that gives us symptom relief, but we're not so high that we can't function. Cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, there's a lot of talk about that. There's a genetic component. What are we using in the cannabis now? A lot of the cannabis is hybrid. And then, we get into cannabis that you get that's not from a dispensary. And then I also hear a lot about the testing, that goes on in Maryland. Nothing's ever perfect. But BI-22, we focus on harm reduction. And Richard works with the Maryland Overdose Response Program. And I think that we all feel strongly about helping to prevent opioid overdoses. But there's so much more, like breaking the stigma of addiction. And one of the things that we like to say, when he dispenses the Narcan, is, when you treat somebody with Narcan who's overdosing, they need to be able to breathe to think about getting into recovery. So, I think like moments like this where we all get together and put our heads together and think about how can we do this differently. I'm very humbled, to be doing the work that I'm doing, and thank you.
I'm going to piggyback off something you said.
Hello? Yeah, as a patient, I see a lot of the same things with my visits to the dispensary, and I personally voice this concern every visit I go. I engage with the attenders. There's some dispensaries that, since we've turned to adult rec, aren't even really thinking about it medically anymore, which is a shame, but the ones that do, I keep driving that home about the percentages, and I keep insisting, it's the terpenes, and the other cannabinoids, the CBGs, and cannabis. It's going in and out. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just talk for real. And then, so that's my concern. And I keep reminding them that it's not about the percentage, and they keep going up over 28%, 31%, 32%. And the medical people, we do get higher doses, but those are in different cases. And the concern about the hybrids is I get triggered by too high of alkapinine or other things that are called sativas. People like to argue, oh, well, sativa and indica isn't really a thing anymore. Fine, let's get the science behind it and actually educate people on it. But we really need to drive home the dispensaries and the growers, regardless of adult rec, and educate that, hey, you can even tell everybody for a better high. You just look at the other things in lower doses, and you can get some really good stuff for everybody. And Cheryl Murray Powell in my film did make one comment that I don't know if I had to cut it out because of the length. But when it comes to the adult use, the one takeaway that I stuck with is that everybody's medicated that's using it, they just don't know it. Trauma's trauma, everybody's trauma, especially in PG County and places near DC where I live. There's a lot of, just life sucks, right? So, anyway, yeah,
I usually speak pretty loud. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm a veteran. That's great. I did go in the Army at 17, and different than some people, I jumped out of planes for a living. So, and I'm from a military place, right? So I'm from a place called Fort Bragg, Fayetteville, North Carolina. The only other conceptualization to be where I'm from is like to be from Sparta, which you would think like, who's actually toughest here, right? You got the kids on the corner, you got the kids in the country, and then you got the guys on the other side of the fence doing all kind of stuff. And all of us act out in a way in high school, get tested around 9th grade, and the baddest one that toughest on us are, we want to wear a hat or a beret to the side, right? It's very real. And I bring that up because one of the veterans in the movie mentioned about the difference between going in at 25 and 18, right? So I'm looking at 17. Brain function development. Brain's absolutely different. And so I missed the first question because I needed another second. So yes, I own a cannabis company with my friends. It's great. We changed all the laws. We did all the things the right way. We do all the things the right way. We grow every spectrum of plant to make sure we have terpene profiles that help people like me, right? Because the single biggest driver, and including everything that was said here, is just amazing to me, to Brent, from what I've seen, is the moment you, after experiencing what I have, in other men and women I have, when you turn your system out, right, when you're charged up at the highest degree, like it's 3, 4 in the morning, somebody's waking you up to play a game, right? That's training, right? To prepare you for what being in theater is like. Theater, what is theater? War, theater, wow, it's a show, right? So what if you were on, acting 24 hours a day, right? Because that's what it is. So then when you come out and you're off of it and you're home, and if someone offers you any drug where the potential side effect is suicide or depression, you probably shouldn't take it. Because that 10% occurrence or 5% studied occurrence, Dr. Sue Cicely, that's my doctor. Let's talk. Dr. Sue, that's my doctor. Let's talk. I've been doing this since 2014. So when it comes down to my understanding that if it said 10%, 5% when they did the NIH study, and we'll get to Schedule 3, if it said 10%, 5%, 3% in a normal person, that's 40%, 30% in the bag. Because they're wired different. Firefighters, police officers, people who are trained to respond to trauma fast, even some doctors, they might be wired down and just so calm. You're like, oh my God, you killed yourself. Any drug that has that side effect would have to be questioned. And that's why I think whole plant therapy, cannabis, psilocybin, and mushrooms, right? I usually don't say peat, I call it peat. But these occurrences don't have that side effect. They just don't. And they don't have lingering effects. They just don't. right? So when we talk about harm reduction, trauma reduction, raise your hand, Reggie, Jay, another good group of friends I brought out here to talk and interact with you guys from all sides, because that's my belief. The moment you give a veteran the pill that has a suicide rate, you're encouraged for a veteran-specific demographic, it went up 20% more than whatever the standard test said. So it's just absolutely dangerous for us. So when they gave me Paxil at Walter Reed, when I was there for 4 months, I know exactly what those nightmares were like. Rick, remember sitting in there hearing people just got your leg cut off. Yeah, it's a rough night. And you gave me something supposed to help me, and now it's triggering potential suicide. It was 10% in a regular person. Well, what does it mean?
Just to touch base a little bit on what Brandon's saying as well. I mean, the antidepressants, and I say this often, the antidepressants that I was taking from the VA did exactly what they said they were going to do. They kept me from being depressed. They also kept me from being happy. You're supposed to go through emotions as a human being. I don't care if you're a veteran or not. You're supposed to go through anxiety. You're supposed to go through anger and sadness. And we're not supposed to have this muted life. And walking into a VA hospital and seeing all these veterans that were trained, like Brandon's saying, to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to PT and see these 350-pound zombies walking around the VA hospital, it's not a judgmental thing. It just hurts your soul because you know that we can just do so much more better. And I wanted to touch base too on the 25 age thing, because I hear that so often where I'm from, in Carroll County. Nobody should use cannabis until they're 25 years old because the brain is still developing. Why do we think that cannabis is the only thing that affects brain development? Why do we have 14, 15, and 16-year-old kids on 4 or 5 different prescription medications? So we need to cut it out with the whole, we have to wait till we're 25. In an idealistic situation, probably backed by science, sure. But at 22 years old, I went through 2 combat tours in Iraq. So what do we say to the veterans then? Hang on for 3 years so we don't, possibly affect your brain development. Yes, ma'am.
Well, don't you feel that would also apply to enrolling in the military in general? You were a recruiter. I'm sure you went to many high schools. I also, at 17, 4th generation Navy, joined, and by the time I was 20, I was out. And now I am 64 years old and dealing with stuff that nobody knows because it's not documented.
Well, that too. I mean, just think about the whole fact that you can be, you can die for your country, but you can't legally drink. Obviously, I'm an alcoholic, so I'm not going to promote drinking, but again, there's just a lot of things to look at. But yeah, I just think it's really time to peel the curtains back, especially with the news today. I just think it's here, and we really need to start talking about it. People freely talk about their alcohol consumption, but when you talk to people about cannabis, even in a legal state, when they talk about it, they're talking about it like it's illegal. A lot of whispers, a lot of hush-hushes. I can't let this person know, I can't let that person know. And I think that has to stop, because if we want this plant to be normalized, then we need to start talking about it.
That's what we're all here for tonight.
So as moderator, I had questions, but now I got to talk a little bit. So, not me. So I think one area that is the VA. And although, again, with the news today and things that we're seeing, I myself, I have refused all antidepressants, and I've been very open from day one with my VA providers and doctors. I had an appointment with a new doctor, and within 5 minutes, without discussing it with me, she put that I had cannabis use disorder into my permanent health record without being properly diagnosed. So even though the things that we see, going on today with Schedule 3 and we hear all this, we want the broader audience to understand that stigma is still there, and that there's stigma at the VA. Not every doctor is all accepting. We're seeing issues with those who are on pain medications. I have a friend, not a veteran, but who is a paraplegic, and they pulled her meds whenever she became a cannabis patient. This was in West Virginia. She needs both. She's not looking for an alternative, she's looking for an adjunct. And so these are the issues we still face today. These are the issues we're still fighting against today. And these are the issues that are still causing veteran suicide today.
Which is ironic, because the opioid problem actually, I think, got its roots in West Virginia with the coal miners and their backbreaking work, and the lies that the pharmaceutical industry taught us or
sold our doctors. So like Boone said in the film, well, he was talking about cannabis, but people are told lies. They don't know they're lying. They're just perpetuating the lies they've been told from the beginning. Period. So, and West Virginia, I just.
So, I mean, this segues right into my next question, and this is for each panelist. So for the veterans and family members in this room tonight, what is the most important thing they should know about getting support or accessing alternative therapies? Feel free to jump in.
So if you need help, ask for it. You know, break the stigma. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. You know, always the suicide line is always available, and I know people that work on that suicide line. You know, we want people, you know, to continue to live and have good lives, especially our veterans.
I was going to say, I think we need to be very, very honest about cannabis. Being a cannabis advocate and interacting with other cannabis advocates, I get frustrated sometimes. We always avoid talking about the negatives of cannabis. We always avoid talking about side effects. I personally do not believe cannabis is for everybody. I think it's a very, very, very individual choice. I had a veteran call me the other day, and he was looking for some guidance at the local dispensary and the menu and whatnot. And we had a long conversation, and he just lost his wife. And at the end of the conversation, I ended up meeting him at the vitamin shop. And he said to me, he said, I was supposed to talk to you about weed. And I said, well, we talked about it. We talked about it for a long time. And he said, well, what am I doing at the vitamin shop? And I said, sir, just from everything that we've talked about and some of your anxieties that you have going on, we should probably try some magnesium. We should probably try some L-theanine to start out. And at some point, if you think that this isn't really giving you what you need, you know, then let's definitely talk. But I just don't think cannabis is a cure-all, and I think people need to understand, again, just like the antidepressants, we're supposed to deal with life. So if every time you have any type of anxiety in your life, you're reaching for that cannabis, I think we should start questioning that as well. So
I want to actually testify to that account
Personally, as I said, I became an advocate and I became my own experiment. And like Fabian Henry, the Canadian up there, who's doing this with other veterans, and like others in the film have said, and Renee, it's just a Band-Aid. But it is a drug, and it can be abused. And that's why you start low, go slow. And even with my philosophy of plants over pills, I think you also need to talk to your doctor about your medication and even consider finding a combination. What I wound up doing was getting off of 150 milligram anti-anxiety medicine that if I didn't take it the next day, I was a living nightmare. Today, I'm on like a 5 or 10 milligram, like light anti-anxiety thing, balanced with cannabis. So I microdose throughout the day a little bit all day long. But again, the wrong strains, get some sativa strains that set me off, and it's no good. The magnesium, I went through a lot of, my diet changed a lot, all because of, in fact, it's even helped change my diet for the better, and my health. It gives me more energy, and I've lost weight, and I'm enthusiastic, and I'm happy. So you have to just take everything in the right amount. Very good.
Is it perspective from like how they can help someone, or from what angle? I want to make sure I was clear on the question.
So let me find it again. I have a lot in front of me.
I'd like to hear either way if you have.
I was about to. Thank you.
And then we want to hear from you guys too. So please don't hold back. The mic talk to you about what you were going to say, and then.
I think there's no single one thing. I think the best thing I can tell you sounds like, the genie came from the bottom. It was like, you had 3 wishes. What do you wish for? You wish for more wishes. Like that's the smart thing, right? There is no one answer. 2 things can be true at the same time. So one of the biggest life lessons that I was able to experience was working and starting a program called the Weed for Warriors Project. And so it was cool because it was national, right? So it's a bandolitos, right? So that's what we call each other on the phone calls. All the way from Oakland to LA, and then Arizona got on board. That's when we met Dr. Sicily, and then Texas, and then, you know, we had a problem with some southern states. We got some Florida folks, and, you know, really focused in by the time it came to DC, me writing a policy about what Shamithia is talking about, veterans losing their benefits. And then that ended us throwing over 10,000 pill bottles at the White House, national news. I've been like a flash activist, right? That's different than an advocate, right? So what I did for others is make a scene, right? Make a way. Hey, is this the only way? Your patients, your friends, your family, they start prescribing a whole bunch of pills and stuff like that. You need to be challenging the doctors. You heard the women here, that's one way you need to challenge, because yeah, it may need some help. Well, what about their diet? What about this? And then also the other side is never underestimate the power of a friend in nature. Like, life is very challenging for different people at different points in time. Sean and I were talking about it coming in, like something that may make me super numb and calm, make someone else crash out, right? Neither response being better than the other. Cannabis being a tool that allows us to access it, so that we, for Words Project, didn't work if we weren't taking walks, right? We would go walk through the woods, and that was the cool part, because now you got 10, 15 vets in the canyon walking, and then that rekindles something else, which is the camaraderie, because we will isolate. Like, my friends here with me, they'll be like, all right, go get them out of the house, go get them out of the garden. We will isolate. Right? We were a team building unit, right? Team units. Even if you hear horror stories, my drill sergeant, I'm a sergeant this, and we complain. Why? Because they missed that, right? And you can never change that. That's like an athlete who's not playing anymore. That's like a musician who doesn't have someone listening, the same. So I think it's two things to be true. You got to introduce nature and people who are like-minded and force that. You heard the good doctor here talk about her relationship with the husband. You got to go outside. You got to meet people. You hear Sean also talk about meeting people and the value of being outside and how that makes us feel better, right? And we got to push that too. We'll start feeling sorry for ourselves and shit. So I said the shit so you can know it's real.
Something I'm a little bit afraid of too is I hope we don't try to mimic the pharmaceutical world. I can see that kind of starting to happen as well. And when you take 5 milligram edible, how many milligrams of THC are you getting into your system? 5 milligrams. But if I'm taking a 23% THC strain and I'm grinding up a bud about this size and I'm putting it into my water pipe and I'm smoking a little bit of that, how many milligrams of THC am I getting into my system? Oh, well, we're not really exactly sure. So if we're going to talk about proper dosing, then we should only lean on the edibles. And I completely disagree, because we're looking for wellness. Also, too, if I suffer from PTSD, I can't say, in an hour and a half from now, I'm going to get benefit from this edible cannabis, because that's how long it takes edible cannabis to process in your system. So we really have to understand that there's a lot of reasons why people use specific types of medication, but I don't think we should just get really tracked on that, especially when he's talking about, using cannabis with other veterans. When we talk about prescription medication, it's a very individual act. You pull it out, you take a pill, and you pop it and move about your day. You don't really call your friends up on a Friday night and say, hey, do you guys want to get
take all our meds and shit.
What kind of meds you got this week?
If we're talking about veterans that are suffering from depression, not only are they getting the benefit from the actual medicine of the cannabis consumption, they're also doing it with other people. So that's a dual thing that we're doing. So I don't think we should steer away from that. Because I think when we see 2, 3, 4 people using cannabis together, well, there's no way they're using medicine. Absolutely. And they're probably doing it probably better than using it individually.
That's it. They were
Good. And that might help some moms and postpartum. Hey, get together with the other moms and y'all smoke a J while the dads and the grandmas got the babies together. They might pop
Instead
out.
of cocktail parties.
Right. Instead of, reality.
Well, let's hear it from you guys. What kind of experience? Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you. It was a very powerful film. It really hit me. That was great. And congratulations for that one. Well, my question is, just a little background. My father was a World War II veteran. And I think in World War I they call it shell shock. And then in World War II they call it combat fatigue.
Yep.
Well, in about the 1960s, when I was 5, 6 years old, every time there was a loud bang, my father would roll on his bed and shout, "Take cover!" Mm-hmm. And I really didn't understand that one when I was so young.
Yeah.
So finally, when PTSD came out in the 80s, that's the time I realized, oh, that was it. That's why my father was like that. Well, my question is, there was like a united front that was against marijuana in the 1940s. So I would just like to know, to be able to fight that one, was the pharmaceuticals behind it? What was the reason behind, why was it so demonized?
So,
Racism.
not going, okay, 1937 with the marijuana tax stamp is, you saw they said marijuana, which was the Mexican drug. They're bringing it in from Mexico, these low-life people. We don't want, oh, well, that's what they're all doing. Then fast forward to the 60s. Now it's not just the brown people, now it's all people of color and the hippies. The goddamn people protesting this war that's going on. In fact, here's an amazing story. Montel Williams, who was in one of my screenings, told me a personal story. He went to Jerusalem and he was talking about the war with the Palestinians. But they also, they prescribe cannabis to not only their veterans, but to their war fighters, okay? And while he was there, they were on the border and they were grinding up full bushes through weed chippers, right? And then bagging it up and then taking it across the border. And he asked the guy, well, like, you're putting in like all the trash and all the stems and shit, right? Shit you don't want in your bag. And he's like, it doesn't matter, they'll still smoke it. He said, well, why are you even doing that? He says, to make them pacifists. So they won't want to fire their rockets over to us. They just kick back. And that dawned on me why alcohol is so condoned in the military, but marijuana, something that makes you want to fucking hug your brothers?
Yeah.
Who's going to fucking point their gun at the enemy when they're, you know?
Can I bring something in So, absolutely. So in the 40s, today's hectic. Schedule 3. Everybody clap it up for Schedule 3.
Yeah, bud.
They already spent $50 billion studying this shit in 1940. How much is $50 billion in 1940? Right? And he's like, no, you're lying, not 50 billion. Like, no, it was 50 million then, which would be how much now? Right? Might be exaggerated. But really up to about $700,000. They spent $50 million in the 40s, and then another set in the early 60s, right? Studying cannabis, studying psychedelics. Where did they do it at? Bethesda and Aberdeen, right? Number 1 and 2. So they already knew that it calmed people down. They already knew that it was chill. They already knew that it was actually taboo. So there's a lot of factors, even on what cannabis does economically and what it was doing, on taking away from pharmaceuticals then, right? And so they understood that then, they studied it then, and they used veterans and studied it in the 40s. And then that's how they made the Controlled Substances Act. It wasn't just like, oh, la la la. They already spent the money. So today, being Schedule 3, like, we're going to approve more research. Sure. Great. Awesome.
And to caveat off of that, while I was making the film, I also learned that when Nixon decided to go ahead and add it to the Schedule 1 with heroin and other harmful drugs like that, he had 19 studies, I think, done. He picked the one study that showed only the bad.
Right.
And only published the parts of that, which is the part that it said it's a gateway drug.
The Schaefer Commission. They got on TV and spent another $5 million, this is what Rick's talking about, going on TV, and then the president was like, how dare you release these results? Because they were so appalled that he would pick just one, that independent folks spent that money and then shut it down. And then now you had the other billions of dollars spent, let's say research-wise, in anti-drug campaigns and everything that works to propaganda, condemning everyone that's a patient, condemning everyone that had a family member that could benefit from the research of cannabis treatment or not, even seeing Dr. Sicily go through. Everybody, all that's research money. All that counts, right? So even in the legislation today, I didn't know. I was talking with Sean, like, how am I going to say this without sounding like too condescending? And like, it wasn't enough. It was like placating. It's like, play. Yes, research has already been done. In fact, they spent $450 million in research last year on cannabis, right? NIH and other institutes. But how much did they spend on buprenorphine Refritamine, I'm not a doctor, right? This is the response to opioids. $1.8 billion. Okay, they have another research study that they already spent, let's just say another $500 million in the last 3 years for ketamine. And independent research, VA hospitals can prescribe and test ketamine, but there's no overall framework. These are all things that are Schedule 3 now. Dramanol, another thing. Drobanol, another thing. They're Schedule 3 now that they have. So we can't be fooled, and we have to still take the practical advice of the physicians here and listen to us, not for me as a business owner, but from a patient and an advocate, activist, right? The business for me as Black Market is a reflection of what we've been asked for, and that's a financial string even to say, hey, we're going to make sure we keep 21%, 24%, 17% strains on the show because this matters for people like me, right? And then it took that much, right, for Maryland to even have somebody like myself have to go as far for 10 years to have a license to combat it. Because if not, the other 21 MSOs were just going to throw us all in a THC battle, right? And for that, my business struggles. For that, we need support, right? So we got to speak about, well, why do terpenes matter? They matter because it's not just a dollar sign. When you get THC plants that are mutated at 33, 34%, what happens then is they're genetically pushing mutations forward that don't produce the other miraculous results that these plants in nature can interact with the cannabinoid system. So that's like, I love Costco when you have a big family cookout, but if I'm eating for just me and my significant others and intimate groups, we're going to the farmer's market, right? We got a big Costco thing, we got a big family cookout, like, oh man, we got to get the apples from there. It happens, right? I get both. It's a marketplace for everything. But I did want to acknowledge some of those levels about scheduling and what the misnomers are to go forward today with truth, right? Did it do anything? Did anybody get free from jail? Did it put any framework in place to say that, after all this removal and stripping of DEI principles, that anybody would be required to, any standard of research is going to happen now? Right? No. It was just a blanket, hey, we want to flash in the pan, get a news article, and move forward. And it's on us. Right? One of the good instructors here, she's a career services lady. Can you raise your hand? What's your name again, ma'am? I'm sorry. Ms. Roa. She killed it. She said, regulation creates jobs. Right? We still need legislation. Executive orders create some movement change. Legislation, right, creates requirements. But regulation creates jobs. And even right now, Maryland has regulations on books, like things that matter, legislation, and those create jobs. That's how we get in this list.
When I hear people like Brandon talk, I just want to be real honest with this. I start to experience a level of guilt because I was part of the problem. And I also think it gives me a different perspective that allows me to impact different types of people as well. I was against this plant my entire life. I didn't use this plant until I was in my mid-30s. I was raised in a household where alcohol was very, very prevalent. But if I got caught with cannabis in my house, I was told to stay away from certain people. Stay away from that pothead Doug. Yeah, that pothead Doug went to Tufts University. So I probably should have not listened to my father when I went to that. But I worked myself up to a half a gallon of vodka a day for about 8-9 years straight. And I got arrested on April 19th, 2017, and I checked myself into rehab the following day. So as 4/20 being my sobriety date, people say, oh, that's cool date to pick. And I said, I didn't pick it. It really is part of my story. But I think that date, in combination with my background and the combination that I made fun of people who used cannabis, it makes you fat, stupid, and lazy. And all those years of heartache that I would have saved myself from if I would have opened my mind a little bit. And it does. I was watching a show the other day, I think it was on Dateline, and it was a rerun. But I was watching it with my wife, and I'm watching this black man that was wrongly incarcerated for over 30 years. And all of a sudden, he's getting let out of jail, and he's hugging his mother for the first time. And I am highly medicated at this point. And I start bawling my eyes out. My wife's like, well, what are you crying about? And I said, are you watching the same thing that I'm watching? So it's not just about, it helps me with my anxiety, it helps me sleep, it helps me become a human being.
Amen.
This is my empathy. It allows me to have more caring for people as well. So I just really hope people can just understand that it's really here for us, and we should really look at it for what it is.
Please.
I have like a two-parter. So what do we do at this point? Like me as just a regular person who wouldn't be able to talk about cannabis the way you guys are able to. What do we do aside from like the obvious like monetary support? Like, and I really like how you talked about talking about it more freely to people. But I was wondering if there were other things from your perspective that we can do to kind of further the cause from where we stand. And then the second part to that, especially for Renee, like as a medical provider, how, because it's easy to say challenge your doctor, but what does that mean? Like I have a doctor who is very against it. I told her, oh, I use cannabis. But she's like, oh, you should stop that. And like she's not the only provider that and it's like we get together like this and it's almost preaching to the choir, right? So, but like I feel like I would like some actionable steps, and how do I talk to my doctor about it? Because
Well,
I can't
introduce,
just change
and
doctors.
start with the rescheduling. That's an acknowledgement by the government who has their licenses in their hands, acknowledging that, yeah, no, it's not like heroin after all. You know what I mean? You just lighthearted to it, be like, well, actually, there's been thousands of reputable studies, and here, I'd like to just show you an example, or here, check out this film, that's why I made it. It's an example of not arguing with people and getting in their face, because that's where people put up the brick wall. Right? It's about breaking the stigma, that's what everybody's been saying tonight. And it's about testifying and giving personal things. Well, no. And give them examples of things, of other medicines that help with other things. And be like, yeah, no, I've seen this personally. And wouldn't you rather let like some of these veterans do something like that versus have them go to the bar and let out their anxiety and their fist fight? Right? I mean, just think what comes to head and be natural. Yeah.
I think education and transparency is so important. And anybody can educate themselves on any topic, especially in this day and age when we have a lot of information just at our fingertips now. So I just think the information's out there for you to really kind of take a look at. And if you're really passionate about something, obviously it's a little bit easier to educate yourself on that. Because I always say, and I am not a medical professional, and if somebody asks me a question and I don't have the answer, I say, well, I don't have that answer, but I'm going to find that resource for you. But once you start getting yourself involved so much, I'm finding out that maybe I do have that answer. So for me, it's just been a lot of education, because I live in a county that is very, very anti-cannabis. So I've heard it all, so I kind of remember what people said and kind of what my response was to that. But the more pushback you get, I think the more educated you become, because you're kind of a little bit more well prepared for what people would say.
Two things.
Well, I wanted Renee to still have a chance to respond as the provider.
I'll try to talk quickly, but it's hard. So there's a couple misnomers, like, when you talk to providers and they're like, oh, well, we don't have enough research about cannabis. That's not true. The rest of the world did not stop researching cannabis. They did not stop peer-reviewed research because the U.S. did. There's a lot of high-quality peer-reviewed research out there, and I just handed you some articles that we need to be talking about. I take these with me everywhere. And then the other thing I think that people don't know as a provider, I'm in the cannabis industry, but I also work for a health department, and I have a small telemedicine. And for those medications that I prescribe, I need a DEA number. So when you get your DEA number, you have to take, as a nurse practitioner or mid-level, you need 16 hours of education for prescribing opioids. There's a place for opioids, but it's got a lot of risks, so we need to learn that. But when I signed to get my DEA number, I signed something that said I would never talk to anybody about a controlled Schedule I drug. And I was in the NCST program, and I was like, well, I'm going to talk to people about cannabis. And I signed it, but a lot of people that are providers have that fear, knowing that their livelihood is based on something that they said they wouldn't talk to about a controlled Schedule I drug. So that's not something that most of us talk about. I'm in a position now, my sons are grown. I was a single mom. When I was a single mother, would I have done what I'm doing now? I don't know, because I was their sole support. So I guess I don't really know. When you talk to a provider, if they're not interested in educating themselves about alternative treatment, see if you can find somebody else. And recently, I had joined Cannabis Club on Facebook, or I'm not quite sure why, because I try to stay on the down low. But somebody put out 3 providers, that you could call for cannabis certifications, and I was one. And somebody said, were you unhappy that I put your name out there? No, I wasn't. I said, but I want you to notice that all 3 of the providers are nurse practitioners.
Crazy.
And that's shout out for any.
That's a good perspective.
I guess, well, 2 things. You can continue to educate yourself. I mean, there's a lot of information out there. You can check the source, and you don't have to know everything about everything. I mean, if there's something specific that you really want to know, do your homework. I mean, go to the Google machine. It's just there's so much information out there that you can trust. There's also a lot of information out there that you can't trust. I just have one comment about the whole rescheduling thing and the fact that it just came out on Thursday?
Mm-hmm. Came out this morning, yeah.
And our government is very different today, and the only thing I'm gonna say is, they do stuff like that because it's a distraction.
Yep.
And so you have to say to yourself, well, what don't they want us to think about today?
That's good.
And so they just don't do that stuff just to do it. They do it because they don't want you to do something else. So, I'm always like, okay, let's dig a little bit deeper.
So again, just, one comment, I did have a whole section that we were gonna talk about Schedule 3, but we had a great dynamic conversation, so we didn't really get to discuss it in depth. I agree with you, like 100%, but I just wanna say, like, this past week, the EO with psychedelics and then today with Schedule 3 has just been amazing for our industry. Never be distracted, keep your eye, but it's one that I'll take, and one that's finally in our favor. And none of that would be happening if it wasn't for what we're doing right now. Yep. The University of Maryland was really, as Dr. Johnson said, the first, master's program in the country. They really pushed the envelope. They pushed research. None of that, what we saw would not have happened without programs like this, without advocates, activists, nurses, organizers, business owners, without students, without researchers, without each and every one of you. And so you being here is already, you're on the right track, and you're already pushing the envelope even more forward. So we have time for one more question before we wrap up. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Altamont Mark Brooks. I'm a candidate for Congress for the 6th District of Maryland and a mentor to Roman. I am so proud of what you're doing. It is the pioneers who sometimes go unsung, and people take credit for what you do. Don't allow it. What you're doing is not only going to impact the lives of so many people, it's going to really impact communities. With what the president did today, it's so ambiguous, but we get a chance to right some wrongs, and I'd like to know what I can do to step up to not only help promote, but let's get this over the line.
Okay. That kind of brings us to, is one thing I want to say is a great way for for you all to help support is check out our organizations. Check out Veterans Initiative 22. Please check out the Unprescribed. Please check out Canicare. Please check out Veterans Initiative 22. Please check out Burner's Block. And then Brandon is also, you're with Patients Out of Time, and you're also the owner and operator of a very great cannabis brand, Black Market, veteran-owned, Black-owned, social equity. We love.
I'm not going to do that.
I
think you guys can talk to Brandon out in the parking lot.
Not to take Brandon shine, but Burner's Block will have my products in the Maryland dispensaries and in August as well.
So I want to know this is.
Be short, please do.
I have a big bottle of magnesium at home, and I have a big case. So when I go home tonight, I'm gonna start taking
Yeah, you got one.
Let's conclude Nina and the
I didn't know
Students
that's what they were
Association. I think the best thing we can do is if you can give a follow-up email to everybody who signed up with all of our links.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and
That's in
we'll
the
be around for questions if anybody has them. Don't have a lot of time, I'm tired, but let's trade digits, all right? Thank
This was good, man.
Yeah.
This was really good. I love your crown.
Thank you. My birthday was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And I'm working with the mayor's office in DC. You Maryland?
Where you going?
I used to live in
Where you going?
St.
I got my picture.
Yes, okay.
If I can take a picture on my phone, I appreciate that.
Well, everybody come in. Let's act like we love each other.
We do.